think we should begin with this quote because I really like it. I actually borrowed it from Lory's presentation. This is by the former Director General of the World Health Organization, a lady too, and she says, "Let us begin with an unequivocal assertion. Proper nutrition and health are fundamental human rights." And I think it's so important that people really realize these things. It's the fact that you're growing older does not mean that you should naturally lose your health and vibrancy. There are cultures all over the world, people and cultures all over the world who are enjoying good health to their 80s and 90s. And you don't have to accept that this is just how things go. There is always something you can do about it. And that's why we are so glad, really, to have Dr. Moore on to come speak about this. She is a very, very smart lady, and she has the ability to communicate information, crucial information to people in layman's terms, layperson's terms, in a way that they can understand and grasp. And so without much further ado, I'm going to ask Sherry to help introduce Lory while I transfer control to Lory. Go ahead, Sherry.
Okay. Dr. Lory Moore graduated from Baylor Law School with honors and has been focused for almost 20 years on maximizing opportunities and systems for the maximum benefit of her clients and business partners. Her business endeavors have not only included a successful law practice, but also establishment and management of multiple creative and profitable sales and service businesses, in addition to serving as a judge in West Texas. As a network marketing industry and nutrition law consultant and professional educator, Dr. Moore is highly respected as a forward thinker and innovative strategist in helping healthcare professionals, corporate executives, and consumers to take proactive control of their quality of life, including their financial destiny. So we are very excited to have Dr. Lory Moore with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I'm actually going to have to back up here because apparently I didn't start at the beginning of my presentation. Yeah, this is interesting. When I heard David say he was going to hand me control, I got a little bit excited, I think. So.
Okay.
When you're getting control, that's something that can actually get you going here. So, guys, the topic is quality of life. And it's really, quite frankly, I can't think of another topic that's more critical in our world today. And it's a topic that you hear about a lot. In fact, you'll be listening to commercials. They'll talk about improving your quality of life, how's your quality of life. And I have to say that, we use words a lot, but I'm just a big believer in understanding what those words mean. I wanted to spend some time at the very beginning just actually discussing what is quality of life. I really appreciate David and Sherry for their commitment to education, because I really have to say that is the one distinguishing factor of the finest people I have known, is that they were lifelong learners. And, it's just one opportunity that's open for all of us to really make ourselves better, and that is through learning and frankly through wisdom, because wisdom is just knowledge in action. And that's, again, what I love about these webinars and what I've always loved about David. He and I have been friends for a while. I'm just getting to meet Sherry, but by extension, I know her commitment. So, guys, what is quality of life? What does that mean to you? Well, I want to cover it kind of in 3 stages. As you can tell by my title, quality of life, I believe it's your right, it's your choice, and it's your opportunity. We're going to cover each one of those tonight and just see, what does it mean? Now, actually, there are kind of 2 different definitions of quality of life. We're going to go a little bit deeper. My daughter likes to say that I am the consummate researcher. In fact, when we see a bookstore, she'll say, "Mommy, look away from the bookstore. Drive away from the bookstore." So when I do this research, I really kind of go to what I call the subterranean level. And I'm not going to go quite that deep with you tonight. Just know that I've actually presented on this topic at seminars all around the world, and it's something that I have a very deep passion about. But basically, quality of life in the general sense means a fulfillment of needs and feeling good about it. That would equal a high quality of life. So there are going to be two segments to that. There's the objective component, which is basically measurable, one that you more traditionally think of when you hear people talk about a quality of life index. So, for example, you'll read a magazine article that will talk about cities with the best quality of life. That's going to be more of an objective measure where you actually have a standard that, so for example, you'll look at crime rates, you'll look at economic factors, you will look at the various population density is another typical one for an objective. And then subjective has to do more with the individual. So let's look at each of those individually. Objective quality of life are the resources that a person has, including the real opportunities to use those resources to meet their needs. So what are the capabilities of an individual or for a society for quality of life? And this is just a slide that I put together that gives an example of what some parameters or categories for quality of life. And we're all used to hearing people talk about capital gains, usually in the relationship to money. But isn't this interesting that when you're talking about quality of life, that there are actually different forms of capital? There is financial capital, you see at the top. There's political capital. There's social. There's human capital. There's cultural. And there's natural or ecological. So, again, this is more of the objective measurement of quality of life that you're going to see scientists measuring. You're going to see politicians discussing quality of life. You're going to actually see this as a measurement on a national scale. In fact, there was an article that just came out today talking about if you were to guess what country in Europe had the poorest quality of life, I think you might be surprised at what the results were. This just came out today. And what they said, for those of you who might be listening in from the UK, was that it was Britain, if you can believe it. Britain
Really?
had the lowest, the poorest quality of life. And, you know, you can look that up and actually look at the details of that. But there, again, are different parameters that you look at. And we as individuals only have a little bit of control over that. I mean, how much do I really control the political outcome? I have one vote. Certainly that's an influence. But can I really control the political capital? What impact can I have on natural capital, on financial? Well, you know, there is an impact that we singly and individually can make, but really it's the collective measure that has an impact on that objective level. But I wanted you to get kind of the 20,000-foot view here of quality of life. But let's take a look on a more personal level. What about subjective quality of life? Well, that basically is also referred to as well-being. And that's my personal experience. That's your personal experience, David. How do you feel about your capabilities and fulfilling your needs? And there are two different measures of this type of quality of life. These are actually these are words from the Greek. And just in case you thought I hadn't done my homework, I wanted to throw some big words in. That's what doctors and lawyers like to do, right? These two measures, hedonic, and that's the one you typically think of when you think about happiness. It's pleasure, basically. What was experienced by the individual on a pleasure scale, that references quality of life. But the other word that's actually more significant is eudaimonic. Eudaimonic. Both of them are Greek words, and eudaimonic means striving to realize one's personal and social potential. Striving to realize your personal and social potential. That's actually the strongest indicator of subjective quality of life. So if you're looking to exercise your capabilities to fulfill your needs for quality of life, well, what are those needs? What are the biggest categories of needs that are recognized worldwide? Well, these are some of the ones that have been identified by the various researchers, and there are a variety of them. What I've done is just culled them down into these broad categories. The first one is subsistence. We all need to get by. We all need to eat. We need shelter. We need clothing. That's Those are basic subsistence needs. We need protection. All of us need to feel safe. We need affection. That's actually a core human need. Understanding. That's actually both related to human interaction as well as to education. We need participation. We are very much social creatures. For the most part, as a general rule, our human tendency is for participation. And that leads on to a need for leisure. We cannot always be about work. We do have to have some downtime. Creation. This is a very, very fascinating concept. There's a new book that's come out relatively recently that I'm actually deeply involved in, and it's called A Whole New Mind. And it talks about, written by Daniel Pink, it talks about that we as a society are moving away from just the information age, and we are moving into the creative age. And it talks about, Daniel Pink refers to the fact that we are going to not just be looking at doctors and lawyers and how they sequentially use that logic side of the brain, but we're actually going to be using that traditional right side of the brain, that creative side of the brain as well, and use them in combination with the left side of the brain. So creation is actually a term that you're going to be hearing quite a lot more frequently. Because have you noticed, guys, that even in our economy, things are changing? I will tell you, for example, when I went to, just spoke at the State Bar Association here in Texas, and you have professionals graduating from law school with 6- and sometimes 7-figure debts who are no longer able to get a traditional job in the legal market. Now, do you think that that creates some stress on their quality of life, the fact that they've got sometimes up to $1 million in school loans to pay back and they cannot get a job because those types of pure logic professions are becoming obsolete? And there are a variety of reasons for that. I actually have an entire another presentation that I do on that. But just so you know, creation is a very fascinating concept that's really coming into its own. Identity, that relates to profession. What do I do as an attorney if I can't get a job any longer with billable hours? What do I do with myself? How do I find my identity? How do I plug in? And finally, freedom. That's another core human need that we, of course, in the U.S. are incredibly blessed to experience at a very high level. So those are the broad categories of human needs and quality of life. And what I've done is, well, actually, I wanted to say this. There was a special recently. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, but Barbara Walters did a special where she was discussing with the scientists and experts about quantity of life. And are you aware that we are on the verge of technology within our lifetime that we are going to increase the average human lifespan to 150 years? There's actually even,
wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And get this, David, this is, you think 150 is big. There's actually some discussion that was backed up by evidence that within my lifetime, and I'm very young, I don't have to mention my age, but let's say I'm on the tail end of the baby boomers. Within my lifetime, there are some scientists that predict that we will have increased the outside lifespan up to 1,000 years. And you're 1,000 years because of the advancements in technology. But here's my question for you. What is the value in a quantity of life if there's no quality? Do I really want to be living to 1,000 years if those years aren't good years? So really, breaking down those categories even more specifically, there are really 4 primary categories, and you see this diagram that we all should be familiar with by now, the interlocking circles. And these are the 3 top categories: health, finances, and relationships. And you'll probably notice from those previous categories that I've really just broken those. I've created even broad categories out of those first few that I showed you. But that doesn't surprise you, does it? Those are very, very common categories. Your health impacts your quality of life. Your finances impact your quality of life. The quality of your relationships certainly affects how you view your life quality. And then the final one, which is actually the topic that is of greatest interest, is happiness. We're going to go into a little bit more detail on that here in a minute. But if I were to ask you what the number one concern in over 85% of people's minds, I bet that there are many of you on this call that would know what that was. economic crisis within the past year that is unprecedented. Who knew that we would be experiencing the equivalent of, some say, on the verge of a Great Depression? I mean, the economic happenings over the last year have been unfathomable. And yet, the one topic that is still on the political mind right now, it is the number one topic, and I'm sure you know what that is, and that's health. Healthcare reform is dominating the conversations, both in the water cooler, if you will, as well as in the politicians in the halls of Congress. Health is the absolute number one concern in over 85% of people's minds. So when you're talking about quality of life, that's really the topic that I'm going to spend the most time on tonight because, again, we've got a limited amount of time, and although I do make presentations on all these topics. And I agree with David. He talks about words. And Rudyard Kipling said this: words are the most powerful drug used by mankind. Words do have power. So I want you to pay close attention to the words I'm using about quality of life because I truly believe that all of us on this call, those of you who care enough to be on a call like this, to educate yourself in your spare time because you want better for your life, I will tell you that you can become part of an incredible paradigm shift. And that's what excites me about conferences and calls like this. And here's why I believe it's critical that we do that. I believe that we have to have this army of individuals who are equipping themselves with information and turning that into wisdom by putting it into action. But here's what's happening. How many of you guys have noticed on your television set, in fact, the single greatest increase in commercial advertising has been in what's called direct-to-consumer advertising. And here's what's happening. Moynihan and Castles actually wrote a book that's called Selling Sickness. And this isn't mere advertising. They say it's an audacious attempt to rework the default status of the human body. Because you see, what they're doing is they are putting disease at the center of human life. That is the goal of the pharmaceutical companies, for you to think that it is normal when anything goes wrong in your life that you need to pop a pill. And here's what concerns me about that. I've actually testified as a medical expert. I'm currently on the board for the Texas Association for Medically Fragile Children. And believe me, guys, there is an appropriate place for pharmaceutical drugs. But you, I'm certain, are already aware of this, and this is what petrifies me about turning disease into the default, is that a pharmaceutical drug, Dr. David, you can verify this, it is a controlled toxin by definition.
Right.
For it to be a drug, it has to be a poison. It's a very calculated poison in certain amounts to perform a certain effect on the body, but make no mistake, it is a poison. And see, guys, what disturbs me about that is, you know, contrary to what David says, some of us do have young children. I have an 8-year-old son. So what I want him to get is that disease isn't normal. Health is normal. And for the vast majority of human history, not only health, but vigorous, robust health has been the default. So I really am not going to stand still as an educator, as a consumer, as a mother, and allow disease to become the default. And here is where it becomes even worse. There was an article in the Seattle Times called Suddenly Sick, and the subtitle was this: The Hidden Big Business Behind Your Doctor's Diagnosis. And here's what these Dartmouth professors discovered. See, there were 4 disease categories that they actually studied. And what they determined was this. Let's say, David, for example, that you go to your doctor's office, being the compliant male that you are, every 3 months for a checkup, I'm sure. And you go in and actually get your blood pressure checked. And you go in and your numbers are within the normal range. So you pat yourself on the back, you leave the doctor's office, and 3 months you come back for that checkup. You get your numbers checked again. They're exactly the same. You're about to pat yourself on the back and leave again, and the doctor stops you and says, "No, sir, I'm sorry." You see, the definitions have changed. You, sir, are now pre-hypertensive. And because you're a pre-hypertensive, I'm going to have to prescribe you these 3 drugs to control that pre-hypertensive condition. And, oh, yes, I'm going to need to prescribe these other 2 to control the side effects of those 3. Because you, sir, even though your numbers were precisely the same, were suddenly sick. Now, this resulted in over 75% of the adult population being newly categorized as diseased when their numbers stayed exactly the same. Now, that's petrifying. Guys, we have a movement out there that's not about health, it's about sickness. And it's situations like this that can make a difference. Here's another article. I promise you I could not make this up, all right? This came out of a newspaper article. There are more recent ones, but I had this particular quote. Contraceptives, painkillers, antibiotics, anti-cancer drugs, and blood pressure drugs are showing up in lakes and rivers. Exposure to these waste drugs has led to the feminization of male fish, delayed reproduction in female fish, and damage to kidneys and livers of both sexes. Now, here was the headline, and again, I could not make this up if I wanted to. Although the drugs are not considered a threat to human health, evidence that they harm wildlife. Guys, that is a price of progress. Here's another one. Researchers worldwide have discovered more than 60 different PPCPs in water sources, according to this chief of the environmental chemistry branch of the EPA. They have to put these chemicals in the water just to get it to your door. And not only that, but you remember all those drugs that are being prescribed for those newly invented preconditions? Those are all going into the drinking water.
Now, what are PCPs again?
PPCPs, those are just chemicals that have been classified as having a toxic effect on the human body. Okay? So we literally have, and the primary ones, as you might imagine, again, those are hypertension drugs, Adderall, all of the ADD drugs. Those are the big ones. Contraceptives are showing up. Antibiotics are showing up. So that literally there are times, depending upon the levels in the drinking water, there are individuals who cannot pass a drug test because of the level of PPCPs in the drinking water if it's not filtered. So this is the price of progress. You know what? We live in a society where we've made incredible progress and positive things have happened, but there is also a price that we pay, isn't there? Now, here's what disturbs me about that. You remember the children's story about the emperor having no clothes, and that's the reality, and it's petrifying if you just look at that reality alone. That is the world's definition of how we're going to treat our bodies. And yet, when I told you I deal with medically fragile children, and oftentimes these are children with so many diseases that many of them haven't even been diagnosed yet. They're on sometimes 50 drugs per month. They are desperately, desperately ill. So part of what we do, advocates for these children, is we look for ways to put positive things into their health side. Okay, there's this scale, and everything is weighing against them. What can we do to increase their odds for success? What can we do naturally to give them that extra boost? And guys, nutrition is one of those that I try to use. But do you understand that oftentimes when I try to bring that to a child or to an adult even that needs some intervention, that needs a positive consequence, I sometimes and frequently am labeled as the radical because I have the audacity to want to suggest nutrition. Now, what is wrong with that? It reminds me of that little kid that was speaking up going, you know what, guys, something's wrong here because you remember the story, the emperor was naked because no one could please him, and so all of his royal advisors were just saying, yes, this is the finest, but it's so fine you can't even see it. Well, guys, that's kind of what I feel like is happening in our society, don't you? I mean, here we have all this negative raining down, and when we try to think of something positive, when we try to present an alternative that has just always been true, somehow we are labeled as the radicals. Well, guys, the reason I've chosen this chalkboard background is because, quite frankly, my 8-year-old son gets it. You know, it really is simple because there are just certain truths that are self-evident. And David mentioned one of these in the very beginning of this seminar. It's a well-known fact that good nutrition is important to quality of life. It's just a fact. And if you think that you have to have the proof to support it, well, here it is. Effective nutritional medicine, the application of nutrition to major health problems. There is a great body of evidence, convincing scientific evidence which clearly shows that nutritional, environmental, and lifestyle-related factors contributes to present-day diseases to a much greater degree and to a much wider extent than is generally realized. Much of this is detailed, specific evidence and information which enables specific actions to be taken now. It cannot be ignored and should be acted upon immediately. I pulled this, as you see, from the Journal of Nutrition and Environmental Evidence, the Environmental Medicine. And it's important to me. I'm a former judge. I'm an attorney. I want the evidence. I want to know that what I am recommending for my kids, my medically fragile kids, is the absolute best that's out there. That's what I want. You may be satisfied with okay, good might be good enough, but for me, I want the best. When I'm dealing with a child who has been through, such as my little niece, for example, 4 years old, diagnosed with neuroblastoma, cancer, a very aggressive childhood cancer. She has been through multiple rounds of chemotherapy, stem cell transplant, autoimmune therapy. I go to the hospital with her next week to go through some more treatments. Guys, when I'm looking to boost her little immune system, I don't want just a little bit. I want the best. I want the maximum. I want the absolute most that I can get for her little body. So yes, I do believe that, as you see, the former Director General of the World Health Organization, that proper nutrition and health are fundamental human rights. And I have to say I'm incredibly proud to have been one of the attorneys who's been involved, who has actually become very specialized in understanding the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which was actually passed just a few years ago, which enabled consumers the right to take dietary supplements and not have them classified as a drug. Because here's the thing. I really believe emphatically that the power is still with the people. This is the seminar, Building Strength. Well, guys, we don't need to forget that the power is with the people. Sure, we have elected officials out there that are doing the job that we elected them to do, but the power still lies with us. And here's what I want you to get. We're talking about economic reform. We're talking about health care reform. Well, who waits for reform? We reform. We, the people, control the reform by the decisions that we make on a daily basis. It's really that simple. It really is. Because here's what I want you to get about fitness. Here, I've given you all that negative stuff, but here's what's really exciting me. You can tell I'm kind of jumping up and down in my seat right now, because this word here, words have power, and this is a word. PricewaterhouseCoopers actually put a study out called HealthCast 2020, and they actually said that wellness would become the preferred, if not mandated, lifestyle. Wellness. Now, what is wellness? Wellness are products and services designed to help people feel better, look better, or improve their what? Quality of life. Guys, it is all about quality of life. And what I love about wellness, you see, is that it takes that concept of health and it turns it into a proactive. Health, or even worse, the sickness culture, we're standing around waiting for someone to bring something to us to treat our symptoms on this surface level, right? But when you're talking about wellness, see, that's something. Remember me talking about control and David handing over the control to me? Yeah, that excites me because I can do something about that. I get to make the decisions for my own body. My mama used to do that for me, but now that's up to me, right? Well, each one of us get to control our own wellness destiny, because you see, only 20 to 25% of quality of life is determined by genetics. And what does that mean for you and me? The other 75 to 80%, it's all lifestyle choices. Isn't that awesome? You see, I get to determine the quality of my life. It's all about lifestyle choices. So here's what I call my wellness strategy. And again, I put this in very simple. I wanted to use this chalkboard theme because I wanted to emphasize to you, it really is just this simple. There's a song, and I kind of date myself because this actually goes back, it even predates me, and it's called, you got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the positive, don't mess with the Mr. In Between. That's really what it is, guys. We accentuate or maximize the positive, and we eliminate or minimize the negative. And actually, I want to encourage you to think about, first, you need to eliminate the negative. I really believe that you need to create that void first. You need to make room for the good. Would you agree with that, David?
Absolutely.
You know, I absolutely believe I'm focusing on the positive, but we have got to clear space. We have got to simplify. We have got to de-junk our life. That is a wellness strategy. And I broke it down even further. You know, I really wasn't that great in math, but again, my 8-year-old can get this. This is my equation for quality of life. Just life, because we all have that, right? Life happens.
Mm-hmm.
You subtract the junk, you add what I call the treasure, and that equals the level of quality of your life. How much junk can you minimize or get rid of? How much treasure can you discover through webinars like this, and then add proactively to your life? And guess what? You get to determine your own quality of life. You see,
That's good.
you look up there at the top, health. I'm not just going to sit back and wait on health reform. I'm not waiting for health care because I am proactive. I'm in charge of my own wellness, my own destiny. And that's incredibly exciting to me because, you know, my happiness depends on that, doesn't it? And one of the funnest things that I ever got to do in my life, this was actually at a seminar, as you see back in, about 4 years ago, and there is a gentleman named Art Linkletter. I had the pleasure and the honor. Art is now 99 years old, I believe, 98 years old, and married 72 years.
Oh, wow.
Just an incredible man, and I got to pick him up at the airport in the limousine, and literally was his date for 2 days. It was great fun with that. And for those of you, they're actually, you know, I get to work with a lot of young people who are on my team and some of my partners, and it just kills me that they don't know who Art Linkletter is. So for those of you who might not be aware of who he is, he had a great special called Kids Say the Darndest Things. And he's just an incredible man. He's lived an amazing life. And one of the things that we got to do in our time together was he had actually just written a book called How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. Isn't that a great title? How to make the rest of your life the best of your life. Because Art is not one of those to sit back. One of his phrases that he and I talked about, and he and I have talked since then. He's actually become a mentor to me and just an incredible influence in my life. He says, you know what, we have to put on our Kevlar armor. We actually have to put up this disease-reflective armor that says, disease, there is no room here for you. There is no space. You remember me talking about we got to get rid of the negative? There is no room in my body or in my life for you. And so we put up this reflective armor, is what he says, and we do that through our lifestyle choices. And Art is one of the most phenomenal wellness advocates that are out there. And these are just going to be 4 simple steps that I'm going to give you about health. Number 1, eat less and smarter. Now, guys, again, you know about the obesity epidemic. I'm not going to go into it, but I have to tell you, just observe. When you go around, when you look outside, we have created an obesity culture. The single greatest indicator of obesity entering a nation, would you like to know what it is? It's not going to surprise you, but as sure as night follows day, when this comes into a country, obesity follows. What would you say that is, David?
Fast food?
That's exactly right. Fast food. You know, as soon as the golden arches go up, obesity falls within a 1 to 3 year time period. That is part of the Western culture legacy that we are leaving, and that's not what I want to be known for. I'm not proud of that. There's an incredible book. If you haven't read it yet, it's called Fasting Nation. There's another movie that actually came out that my daughter watched called Supersize Me.
Yeah.
It literally it talked about the 30-day progression of a man who started out as a healthy male, a fine specimen, and who determined to eat only McDonald's fast food for 30 days. And his health deteriorated so rapidly that his doctors refused to continue the experiment because his cholesterol levels, his blood pressure were moving into the danger zone. They seriously were concerned that he was going to have a heart attack. Okay? So, guys, here's a real simple, again, I love simple. I want to keep it that way. Here's a real simple thing to remember, and there's another book, Michael Pollan wrote this book, and he talks about for the love of food. And his comment is, you know what, there's food, and then there's junk. There's really no such thing as junk food. And when you want food, you want the unprocessed, natural type. You want it to be as natural as you can. That is, it's simple advice, but isn't it wisdom? The closer you can get to nature, the better it's going to be for your body. And you also need to pay attention because we really don't need those supersized portions. Those two simple phrases there. Here's another one, move more and better. Honestly, movement is the key to life, isn't it?
Yes.
Art talks a lot about that. He and I walked a lot. He would lean on my arm and we would walk everywhere. And understand, guys, you know, he was 95 years old at the time, and I tell you, he never stopped moving. He was doing about 300 speaking engagements that year. Okay?
Wow.
This gentleman who understands that energy in motion is part of the life process. But when you move, you really want to move better. You want to be thinking about, okay, how can I engage my body in ways that strengthen it? And one of the things that I always suggest with my clients, with my partners, and even with my kids, is you really want to incorporate, and with my parents as well. I have parents, and then I actually have grandparents. And the single greatest addition that you can make into your movement routine is to actually add in some weightlifting. Because, again, it's building that strength. It's getting the muscle mass up that really improves the quality of life. Just read an article today talking about the elderly and how light strength training is actually enriching and improving their quality of life by about 20%. Okay? Now, here's when we're going to spend a lot of time on this, supplementation, and then the last one is hydration. Those are really in terms of the physical, in terms of your wellness, it really can be summarized in those 4 categories. Eat less and smarter, move more and better, supplement, and hydrate. Because, again, guys, you understand that despite all the negatives in the water out there, you've got to have water for life. So it's important for you to have a filtered water. It's important for you to get good water and to get lots of it on a daily basis. Now, just to cover a little bit on the supplementation, many of you have seen these type of statistics, but I always like to cover it because I still get some people who say, you know what, you can just get everything that you need from your food. Well, here's what the Center for Disease Control says about that. The percentage of adults who reported eating fewer than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day by sex in this year right here. Okay, so you see women did a little bit better than men, but not much. All right, now, guys, this is when 5 servings were recommended. What is it now, David? Terry, any idea?
It's 10 to 18 per day, I think.
Now, so how do you think we're doing? There were only 27% of the women doing it when we only had to get 5, okay? So the point is, we could have gotten it from our fruits and vegetables, but they've also lost their nutrients. We've all seen the studies that fruits and vegetables of today do not carry the nutrients from long ago. So experts now agree it's virtually impossible to get the optimal amount of vitamins and antioxidants through your food alone. We absolutely must supplement. And if I need to emphasize this further, let me just say this. Over 3/4 of healthcare professionals, doctors and nurses, recommend dietary supplements to their patients, and get this, they use them themselves. So if you think, and that I believe is a low number, I think that's underreported because doctors are actually, one thing I'm really proud of, because I think we played a role in this, David, you and Sherry and others that have really been wellness advocates out there. Doctors are starting to wake up to this. They're starting to understand that their patients are their partners. They're starting to understand that it's not about throwing drugs at the symptoms. And part of the reason that they're understanding that, again, is our healthcare system is collapsing of its own weight.
I wanted to mention something real quick, Lory, but yes, they are gradually making that shift, but unfortunately, it's very limited. Like, for instance, they would say, oh, well, you don't need anything else. I've heard one of the most popular doctors in this country say absolutely nothing else other than a general multivitamin supplement. You can get everything else in food. And this is the kind of person who's on TV and who's everywhere. People listen to him, people like that say such things. And I think that's for the most part is as far as most doctors have gone. Yeah, they concede you need a multivitamin supplement.
And I think you're right. I think the majority of doctors are still at that place. But I'm also experiencing, I have a lot of doctors that I work with in my business. And it's really exciting to me to start engaging them in conversation. But here's the thing. Yeah, I work with a lot of doctors because, I have that privilege and I do have the background and training. And so I can, as the medical expert, I'm able to engage in conversation with them. But even more than the doctors, it's the educated consumers. And really, as I mentioned before, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act has really helped with that. Because before that act, part of the law was actually that the average consumer was credulous, was stupid, and did not have the capacity to understand what they needed to put in their own body. So, that was the status of the law before before 1993. So it's critical that the law has changed because it's empowered us. But really, I'm getting back again to the power of the people. Yeah, the doctors can change, but what causes them to change? It's hearing from the people. And guys, I just have to mention again, you can tell my passion for the medically fragile children. You've heard me talk about my little niece, Kyla. And these are kids. The reason it's so important for me to spread the message about quality of life is you cannot imagine, you cannot fathom the worst day that you've ever had. If you have healthy children, if you can imagine the worst day that you've had where they were sick with a fever and you were up all night, if you can times that by 1 million, you might get a grasp of what these families go through. Can you imagine at-home costs of $50,000 per month? That's after you've maxed out your insurance, okay? So for these kids, you understand, and I also work with doctors. I work with elite athletes. I've trained with and educated Olympic athletes and professional athletes. But the common denominator, and the thing that I have in common with these guys, and this is it. This is what excites me. You see, the thing that we share in common is we all have systems of the body. And here's the thing, the power of words. You see, it's important that when we choose the words, because see, at one point when I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed with some wheezing, shortness of breath, chest tightness, and coughing. And the doctor told my mom that I had a disease of the human respiratory system, and he gave this definition, chronic inflammatory condition in which the airways develop, blah, blah, blah. Of course, you guys know that this is what I was diagnosed with. And here's the thing. I went to my entire adult life going through so many medications that had such dire consequences, such dire side effects. I had a dear friend, one of my finest friends, who helped me start the Center for Medically Fragile Children. She and I were on the self-same asthma medications. I discovered nutrition about 10 years ago and was able to make an intervention because, guys, here's the thing. You see, when somebody cared enough about me to bring a nutritional product to me to say, you know what, I don't know what this might could do. I just know that it's nutrition and it supports the body. So I'd like to see if it might could help you and these medically fragile kids. So I started putting it in my mouth, and I started having this impact on the body. And you see, did I care if my asthma was cured? Or did I care that I was able to run and play with my kids again? That I was fully, vibrantly active? Because it wasn't about a cure for asthma, was it?
No.
It was about my quality of life. And guys, I was standing in that same place with my friend Cynthia, who unfortunately, she had so many critical illnesses that we could never get her to that place where she would where she could get on the nutrition. And guys, just to contrast the system and the paradigms of disease and drugs, okay, here's what drugs do. There's disease claims. You throw toxins at the symptoms. There are huge risks and questionable benefits. But and cure is a pipe dream. Name me a disease that has been cured in your lifetime. Sometimes when I ask that question, people say scurvy. Well, what was it cured by?
Nutrition, vitamin C.
That's right. Okay? And here's the thing. When you're talking about nutrition, it's a structure-function claim. I know you guys have talked about that, but a structure-function claim is just what I've just said. You're not claiming a cure for anything. You're saying that the body needs nutrition. That's a well-known fact. Targeted nutrients can help support that body. And when you provide those targeted nutrients to the body, guess what? You provide it for the underlying systems. There's minimal risk and a blatant benefit. And here's the thing. I call it, David, a happy side effect. Because you see what happened for me is once my body started getting those nutrients that it needed, once my respiratory system was getting that targeted nutrition, guess what? I didn't have the symptoms anymore. So the justification for me taking that controlled toxin went away. A happy side effect was I was breathing fully and completely, and I could no longer take medicine because it wasn't medically justified.
How long ago was that, Lory?
That's been about 14 years now. 14 years. And guys, here's the thing. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I'm going to make intelligent choices for my quality of life. I still keep an emergency inhaler by because, it's a life-threatening condition, okay? That's a reality of my life. My dear friend who I've just cited to you, I buried her. Her family and friends buried her in July. And it was because of that continual wear down on her system of the pharmaceutical drugs and all of the negative impacts on her body. And guys, that is what a drug and sickness paradigm will do. And so am I an advocate? Am I passionate about this topic of quality of life? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will tell you, even with my friend, you know what? We were able to have some incredible times together. And here's what I want you to understand. One of the stresses on her that you talk about, healthcare reform, moving onto this topic of finances and prosperity, a huge stressor. My brother's family, for example, with my little niece. Can you imagine a system where she can only eat through a G button, a button that's been placed into her stomach because the tumor was in her throat and they damaged her throat so she couldn't swallow. But can you imagine a system where the insurance company would have the audacity to say to the parents of a 2-year-old child struggling to keep her alive, we're sorry, when you are home, this formula is not medically necessary to feed your child. Okay? So that $1,500 cost for that medical formula, you're going to have to pay for on your own. Do you think that finances for a person who's incredibly sick have an impact on their quality of life? Do you think that finances have the impact on quality of life for every single one of us? Of course they do. Of course they do. So you can see why finances, again, I'm not going to go a lot into that topic here because that's not the purpose today, but it impacts our level of happiness, doesn't it?
Yep. And
here's the one little tidbit I want to throw at you. I'll be doing some more trainings in a variety of places, but I love this quote. This is the single best piece of advice I can give to you from a finance and quality of life perspective. The most beautiful fate, the most wonderful good fortune that can happen to any human being is to be paid for doing that which he passionately loves to do. And guys, again, you want to help your quality of life? Well, you find something that fits in with who you are, that you can be passionate about, that you can develop an income stream around it, and then you pour yourself into that. You give it your all. So, yeah, here are the quadrants again. And you remember we talked over here in the corner where it now says character. You remember what it said before, Jerry? David, do you remember any of that? Because here's what I wanted to point out to you guys. Remember we started at the top with health. Well, I changed that to wellness because I want you to understand it's about proactivity. We talked a little bit about finances, but what I want you to understand, it's not really about the dollar sign, but it's about prosperity. It's about your attitude. It's about what you do with the money and how you relate to it. And in this square over in the right-hand corner, relationships is another aspect of quality of life. But here, again, it's a totally another category that I have a separate training on, and I'm very, very passionate about this. If you want to improve the quality of relationships, improve yourself. The bottom line. It's all about your character. And, you know, you've heard that throughout your life, but all of the evidence supports it. If you truly want to improve the quality of relationships, you've got to turn the mirror back on yourself. So here's what this is kind of maybe a little bit of a surprise angle, but I will tell you, of all of the categories of quality of life, this is the one that you can choose to do today that can have that greatest impact on the quality of your life. This is from a Harvard professor who says, people seeking greater well-being, remember, quality of life, well-being, would be well advised to focus on pursuit of goals involving growth, connection, and contribution. Think about that again. People seeking greater well-being would be well advised to focus on pursuit of goals involving growth, connection, and contribution. Now, why is that? Well, here's the thing. This is the most popular course at Harvard University. It's a new trend called positive psychology. And it's the scientific study of optimal human functioning. For about the past 5 years, about 5, 6, maybe 7 years, but 5 years intensely I've been studying this topic. And there are now over 200 universities in the United States, positive psychology departments. And you know what they study? They study because there's this huge demand to understand what drives quality of life and happiness. Martin Seligman is one of the granddaddies of the positive psychology movement. And guys, the reason that this is so significant, again, you know, I really look at the evidence. I want to know, remember what I told you at the very beginning, you know, if you're looking for something that's okay, there's stuff out there. If you're looking for something that's just good, you can find that too, but I want the best, you know. I really want the best for myself and for my clients and for my partners. So if I'm looking for the best and I'm looking at the research, I'm going to take a look at the research at Harvard and at Stanford and at UC Berkeley and some of the significant research facilities. I'm going to look at what the experts are looking at. And do you know, the subtitle of this course at Harvard is Enriching the Quality of Our Lives. And this may surprise you. The name of the course? Happiness. Happiness.
Wow.
The #1 course at Harvard University. And some of you may think this special. This is an incredibly fascinating event. Because, guys, you know, many of us think, yeah, I could be happy if only that happened, I would be happy. Well, there's an incredible special recently. I don't know if any of you saw this, but if you didn't, you really need to find it and you need to watch it. And it was hosted by Michael J. Fox. And you may remember Michael J. Fox. If there's been any person who's been impacted, who you would look at and say, "Wow, you know, poor guy, bless his heart, man, what a rough lot. You know, man, he drew a bad hand." Because you remember, he was an incredibly successful actor. He was doing so well in his life, and then he contracted a terrible disease, which is actually taking away all of his muscle control and is actually just rendering him in such deep pain that it's very difficult for him to conduct just normal daily activities. But he hosted a special where he was talking about being an optimist. Being an optimist. The topic was happiness. And one of the countries that he visited, which was utterly fascinating, was a company called Bhutan. And you see, guys, this is what I love about where I see the world going. You remember how we started at the very beginning of this course, and we're talking about all the negatives and how society is attempting to set the default for sickness to put the emphasis on the negative. Well, here's what's happening elsewhere, and here's the group I want to be a part of. You see, in Bhutan, they don't measure the gross national product. Instead, what they focus on there, they have a measure of gross national happiness. Gross national happiness.
How do they measure that?
Well, I tell you, it's a fascinating study, and you really do want to look at the topic because they literally look at the factors, the determinants for quality of life. They actually look at what is it that makes an individual, regardless of circumstances, choose to make the best of their life. Okay? So you see, it's not just an individual phenomenon. This is actually a country-wide phenomenon, and it's gaining more and more approval. And you know what? That's what I want to be a part of. If you want to talk to me about the negatives, there's plenty of that. I don't need to hear more about that. But you want to talk to me about being part of establishing a gross national happiness measure? Yeah. I think we can be a part of that. It's groups exactly like this because here's what happiness is. I want you to understand, you might have this definition of happiness in your mind that's remember that we talked about that hedonic happiness, which had to do with pleasure, but then that eudaimonia, which had to do with meaning, right? Well, here's the definition that's used at Harvard. It's current pleasure, enjoying the journey, combined with future meaning on the way to a worthy destination. So see, happiness isn't happiness that you might think with the smiley face and everything going perfectly. In fact, there have been studies that say there are kind of three paths to happy lives. There's a study called Authentic Happiness, talking about the pleasant life where everything just goes perfectly. It's kind of that Hollywood existence where Goldie Hawn always has a smile on her face. Some people would say that's happiness, right? Well, that's not what the research says. No. In fact, there's a second type of happiness that's called the good life, which consists of knowing what your signature strengths are and then recrafting your work, your love, your friendship, your leisure, and your parenting to use those strengths to have more life. Isn't that? It actually use your strengths. But guys, here's where I want to take it. Yes, each of us individually can find the way, the highest and best way to use our gifts and talents. But what if there were a third way? What if there were a meaningful life, according to this study, which consists of using your signature strengths in the service of something that you believe is greater than you? That is the premier level of happiness. Because you see, guys, happiness is all about purpose. Here's what I want to suggest to you. And this is the part that's really getting me more excited than anything I've ever done in my life, and I've had the privilege of doing much. But I believe that we're going to be part of a giving revolution, and this is the power of giving. All of us know about the wisdom of the golden rule. But guess what? Giving is being proven by science. I love it when science catches up to the wisdom, don't you, David? Because we've always known that. There's always power in giving. But guess what's appearing in top journals such as JAMA Science and The Lancet, and in universities like Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine? This is pioneering, high-level research, and here's what it says. From the University of California, Berkeley, there's a 50-year study that says people who give during high school have better mental and physical health throughout their lives. Okay? That's not just in the moment experience. It's a 50-year continuing impact on their quality of life. So what that says to me is when my 8-year-old son and my 16-year-old daughter participate in Rachel's Challenge, you remember Rachel, who gave her life at Columbine because she stood for her values. She stood for God, for what she believed in, for the meaning in her life, and she actually lost her life as a result of it. Well, there's now a movement called Rachel's Challenge, which spreads acts of kindness and giving. And so what an incredible feeling as a parent when I allow my children and encourage my children and actively participate with my children in participating in Rachel's Challenge. I am literally, according to the University of California, Berkeley, contributing to their long-term quality of life. There's another one from UC Berkeley and the University of Michigan. Older adults, you might say, okay, what about the older generation? Well, guess what? Giving protects and improves psychological well-being and delays mortality up to 15 years. And the single greatest lifestyle choice to improve quality and quantity of life, this surpasses guys losing weight. It surpasses quitting smoking. The single greatest lifestyle choice is to give. Now, how powerful is that? This is from the book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People. The remarkable bottom line of the science is that giving protects overall health twice as much as aspirin protects against heart disease.
Wow.
I love this quote. Actually, I didn't include it in the PowerPoint here, but I think I can remember it. He says, if the pharmaceutical companies could get hold of this, they would say, no. If we were a pharmaceutical company, we would say something like, instead of Prozac, we want to give back, okay? Because the power of, it's more powerful than a drug, the power of giving.
Now, explain that. What is exactly, when you say giving, are you talking about giving of money or giving of your time? How exactly?
That's an excellent question. Actually, 8 different categories of giving that are covered. And there's an entire science about giving. Because here's the thing, giving can occur in a variety of forms. It can be financially, okay? That's an easy one that everyone's familiar with. But one of the most powerful ones, for example, doesn't have to do with money at all. It has to do with gratitude. It has to do with having an attitude of being thankful for the positive things and just for your life in general. In fact, the studies show that people who keep a gratitude journal have an incredible positive impact on their quality of life, just in their experience of life.
Right. In fact, I remember, interesting that you say that, because now I do not watch Oprah, okay? I just heard her say it once. And she said one of the greatest things that ever happened to her was when she kept when she started keeping a gratitude journal.
Yes, that's right. And you know, there are foundations that I'm a part of and organizations that I'm a part of. One of them is the Quality of Life Foundation, and they actually talk about one of the single steps that you can take to improve your quality of life is actually writing things down, keeping a record, making a measurement of it. And it's the giving, it's just the positive impact on the body. There are little physical changes that happen, David, on the body as measured by what's called, and you and I have discussed this a little bit so you're familiar with them, they're actually what's called functional MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging now, which actually measure brain activity so that when an individual engages in these positive giving behaviors, you can literally see the brain light up with the positive serotonin, okay? You know, the mood enhancers that everybody's chasing in those mood-altering drugs, guess what? They happen naturally the moment you engage in the positive activity of giving. So again, it can be through gratitude. It can be through acts of service. It can be financially. It can be, again, volunteer work is a huge one. But just the act, another huge one, interestingly, covered in the research. And this might surprise you, being listed in the category of giving. But think about the root word here. One of the biggest benefits for quality of life is forgiving, forgiveness. And have you ever thought about the root word of forgive being give? See, there's a power, the little lifestyle choices that we can make. I mean, can you imagine as a society if every single one of us were to start making today, you don't have to wait for any type of reform. You just choose today. Choose today to have that attitude of happiness. Now, Margaret Mead says this, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Here's, you know, what really excites me about groups like this, are people that care enough to get together, because you got thoughtful, committed citizens. Thoughtful people that are committed to being a lifelong learner. What can I learn today that makes me better than I was yesterday? Actually, I have a phrase that I use with my kids, and it's just a philosophy of life that I like to live by. And what I say to them is, I like to go to bed being proud of the life that I've lived. And that's an acronym, GO BED, G-O-B-E-D. And what we say with all of my resources, with my time, with my money, with my energy, with my talent, good only. All of my resources are to be used only for good. Good only. Better every day. Good only. Better every day. And so we reflect back on our life that day and we say, was in that moment did I make a decision for good? You know, people ask me, for example, if I'm taking a dietary supplement, can I take that with my soda? You know, you could, but is that really the best decision for your body? Was that really a good decision? If you reflect on every single life choice that you make, only good. You know, your body deserves only good. And if you strive to make it better every day, what could happen? How could your life improve this time next year if you did that 365 times? Little steps. And you see, if each of us made that commitment, if each of us become active in the influence that it can have, you know, I talked earlier about a paradigm shift. Guys, this is world-changing. I mean, really, we really do have the ability and the potential as lifestyle advocates, people that care enough about wellness to be a part of what you and Sherry do, David. Those are the people that have the impact to go back to those politicians and to those doctors and to say to them, you know what, here's health reform. Here's what we can do now, and we're going to be a part of this. Now, we know about nutrition. We know about the impact of giving. We know about lifestyle choices, and guess what? We want that to be included in a national plan. Because here's the change I want to see. Here's the reform that I want to happen. How wonderful it is that no one need waste a single moment before starting to improve the world. Now, we don't have to wait for any kind of reform. The message that I want you to get, sure, I have plenty, you know, I have entire programs that I put together on how to start a business, on a one-page business plan to impact your finances, how to choose a supplement based upon the best evidence, how to improve your character through life coaching. I work with some of the most phenomenal life coaches in the world in putting that together. How you can find your purpose. There are actually techniques and tips. Absolutely. You know, I have entire programs and I work with incredible professionals who do that. But you know what? You can start today. Just this information, just this little bit, if you choose to do it, will enrich your quality of life. It all goes back to pulling it together. And really, for me, this is the thing, it's the reason I love doing seminars. It's the reason I've been all over the world teaching. I've taught thousands, but whether I'm talking to two, whether I'm talking to thousands, the reason I love it is I truly believe that the people have the power. I really believe in what you guys stand for, David and Sherry, and that is that we are building strength. That a movement, the gentleman who started Facebook says, 10 people with a purpose create a movement. 10 people with a purpose. If we were to choose to focus on improving quality of life, starting with ourselves, starting with our kids, starting with our families, branching out to the sphere of influence that we have. We all have a sphere of influence, and we know it. Well, what if we were to influence the people in our circle that do only good and to get better every day? And what if we were to educate ourselves on what better was? And what if we were continually looking? We don't have to go to our doctors, David. Like you said, they may not even know. Maybe they're not, they're not out to do negative. but they just don't understand. And that's what I love about the power of the people, because we get to take control of our own wellness destiny. As my dear, sweet friend Art Winkletter says, we get to put up that amazing armor, that Kevlar armor that protects us from all the junk by the lifestyle choices that we make. When we choose the highest quality supplementation, when we affiliate with people. Here's the thing I want you to get too. Guys, one of the things that you can do is you can affiliate with people who are positive. You choose the partners that you go into business with because they're people you want to spend time with. David, if I didn't love you, if I didn't appreciate and respect what you do, why would I be doing a seminar with you? Because it's because I do. It's because I know that you're the kind of person that I'm going to stand with. I know that you're a part of this movement that I want to be a part of. So yeah, there's a power in that. Because here's the thing, another example from the gifting model. Would you rather have one person give $1 million, or would you rather have 1 million people give $1? Which do you think would be more powerful? Well, I know what I want. I want the synergy of that group. And then guess what? If I help those 1 million people get $10 or 100 or 1,000 or 1 million, and then they're giving 1 million, you see, guys, it becomes exponential growth. It becomes exponential positive, so that we're all becoming good for the greater good.
Right.
And that, to me, is the reason that there's no better topic than quality of life. Because I believe it's our rights. I believe every single one of us, not just here in the U.S. God, we are so incredibly spoiled. I need to mention here, there's some research that I'm doing, and I'm actually going to be putting on my website, which actually demonstrates, what we consider poverty level and what poverty level is worldwide. And the quality of life that we have here, yes, it's our right, but I believe it's a right all over the world. And that's one of the reasons why in everything that I do, I still fight to get good nutrition, for example, to orphans in undeveloped countries, because I believe they have that same right that my 8-year-old son does, so a life of quality. And the beauty that we have here, the privilege that we have to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is that we have choices. And it amazes me why we would continue to choose junk. We deserve better. Decide today. You deserve better. You deserve higher quality, because this is your opportunity. Here's the thing, and for those of you, I know many of you are in the wellness business, and I was just reading an article today that was talking about entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are the saviors of this economy, okay? Because quality of life is an opportunity. If you haven't gathered, if you haven't grasped and understood that impacting quality of life can be your business, then you need to grab hold of that, because it's powerful. For me, enriching quality of life, it's a gift, it's a mission, and I believe it's really a destiny. Because again, I'm put here for a reason. We all are. And I want to have, remember, not that first level of happiness, not just the pleasure, not even that second level where I'm making the highest and best use of my strengths, but I want to make the highest and best use of my gifts and talents that the Lord has provided me, and I want to put them to use for a higher purpose. And for me, that is impacting quality of life while I'm here. And it's such an honor for me to have been a part, David. I'm here. I don't know if you want to ask me any questions or if we can take questions from the group, but hopefully those have just planted a little idea, a few seeds in your head of why researching quality of life and looking at this topic is just something that's going to be the best time that you could have spent tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Lory. I don't know how else to say this, but this has been great. We've had people just glued to their screens, and someone says, "Bring her back." One of our presenters coming up next week says, "Bring her back." So thank you again so much. I mean, I don't want to make light of this, but you've shared some really, really powerful things. I don't want to make light of it, but if we were all together in one place, I would have asked them to start passing around the offering bucket.
Well, and you know what? We should, because again, that would improve the quality of life of the people in the room. So, it's
Right.
interesting too that you mentioned that, because another thing, we're talking about business and finances. There's actually another book that I'm reading and actually incorporating in some of my work that says businesses who incorporate purpose and meaning into the foundation of what they do, they actually outperform the S&P 500. Their profits are 1,042% increase. Okay, so I mean, this isn't just. I know, sometimes you talk about happiness and quality of life, and they're viewed as kind of these just emotional terms. But I want you to know that they influence the bottom line. It really does have an impact on everything in our life.
And it's amazing how they begin to find those connections now. What used to be called wishy-washy, sissy, soft science is now coming to become front and center.
Absolutely.
Now in scientific research.
Yeah, and I think it's part of it is the research is showing you kind of go through those stages. So you have the baby boomer generation, for example, getting to that place where they do want to make a difference. So, for example, a lot of the people that I work with, I'm working with professionals who can no longer find a career, traditional path, so I'm helping them set up a business. But I'm also working with, give you an example, a 23-year-old son, my son, who graduated with an education degree, can't find a job. Mm-hmm. So working with that younger generation who are understanding that, guess what, you may not have wanted to be an entrepreneur, but in today's society, you need to understand that you are an entrepreneur. Even if you're an employee, you need to think about taking your job with you everywhere you go, because you're going to have serial jobs even if you're an employee. So then there's that third group that actually is looking to leave a legacy. So you've got people that aren't even retiring when they get to retirement age, David, because they want to give, they want to make a difference. So they're looking to leave a legacy. And that's part of the reason that I think we're seeing this upsurge in, this influence, or emphasis rather, on purpose and giving and meaning. Because the guys that lived the rat race and got out there and made the millions, Bill Gates being a prime example here, Malcolm Forbes, you've got the guys really with the big money who are understanding, that's not where it is. That's pleasure number one. That's the Hollywood pleasure, and that's not what I'm about. I want to be about more.
Folks, if you have any questions, remember you can type in questions in the chat box to your right. And it's interesting, Lory. It just amazes me how, in the ways we are alike. You mentioned Daniel Pink's book, A Whole New Mind. Well, I have that on my shelf, and I read it a couple of years ago. I actually tried to get him on the webinar. Contacted him a couple of times, but he's, busy. And he suggested I get Dr. Seligman, who you also mentioned, Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, who I also contacted. And again, he's busy as well. His secretary said he's busy right now, and blah blah blah. But I think after hearing this, I'm gonna look him up again and call them again and see if I can get him back on, because I think positive psychology is really an important aspect for people to understand why it's so important to health and wellness.
Well, and it's so empowering. Again, the idea being, for decades we've had this concept of psychology, and it's constantly, for you to get coverage, you've got to fit one of these negative categories. So let me figure out which negative category I'm going to assign to you, okay? I mean, that's the way the science of psychology is operated. So for Martin Seligman to have, pioneered this, looking at the positive side and really having a positive impact, that really trickled down into the whole medical establishment, because what it says is, guess what? This human being, this human body, this human mind has positive characteristics, and if we choose to focus on those, we can have greater impact than if we constantly dwell on the negative. And that is really what the science is confirming. we really are a part of something huge, and honestly, I don't think we even really get it yet. I don't, because if we did, we couldn't shut up. If we knew how much of an impact that we have with the positive solutions that so many of us have to offer, we could not sit still from the excitement of it all.
Well, I think you also mentioned it. You said it's very well that having science confirm the wisdom that we already know, and most of us know this intuitively, but now that science is catching up with us and knowing about those scientific research that are out there, that would help us to be empowered to really take the fight, or however you want to call it, to where it should be taken to. And I think I mentioned to you in next month, November, I think someone from the University of Pennsylvania, which is where Dr. Seligman also works, this person who's going to be speaking is one of the top two researchers in the world in the field of spirituality, giving, words, and how these things affect the brain, which of course is the master control system of the human body. And having people understand how things like giving, how things like saying positive words, how things like even negative words can affect you for better or for worse, having people understand those things and actually see pictures, because with functional MRI we can actually see what's going on in the brain when people do different things. So having them see pictures, I think that will further help to empower people to make the changes and to inspire others to also join the cause too.
Well, and, I put my contact information up here. If any of you guys would like to contact me, if you have any questions or if you have thoughts, if you have suggestions on this topic, it is something I'm very passionate about. As I mentioned, I'm still currently serving on the board for the Association for Medically Fragile Children. This is going to be part of my legacy. I mean, I'm committed to that. And so if you have thoughts, ideas, comments, I'd love to, join with you. I'd love to partner together, as each of us in our own path pursue what we can do for the greater good. So any of you guys, feel free to contact me, be in touch. If there's, like I said, if there's anything I can do to support you, I really would love to do that.
Well, we certainly need to get you back on. And for those of you listening over the phone, website is www.lorymore.com, and Lory is spelled with a Y, so it's LORYMOORE.com. And her email address is lory@lorymore.com. Okay, and here's a question from John. How do we cope with the plethora of natural products, both marketed by companies and from local sources? I'm sure you're going to show them how to do that on your website. How to choose a nutritional supplement, huh?
Yes, I mean, and there are, honestly, I look from the judge's perspective. I look at what is the best evidence. What is it that what are some typical indicators that you can look for? And you look for credibility. You look for the signs that suggest this is a company that's paying attention to quality. It really does go back to quality. So yeah, I do cover that more in depth. But simply, you look for companies that have some outside seal of approval. So, for example, the Council for Responsible Nutrition is one. You have the World Anti-Doping Association is another one that gives a certification. You look for companies. Finally, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act has actually mandated almost 15 years ago that there be certain standards that the products be produced by, so that they would be almost a pharmaceutical grade, so that there would be a certain quality of individual ingredients put into each batch that was created. And so you look for a company that's actually following those guidelines, that they're actually conducting their manufacturing processes in ways that would pass that pharmaceutical grade. And those are the types of things, if a company is doing that, they will be stating that in their material. Or ask the question. That's the other thing. Look at the ingredients. Ask the question. Look at the quality and the competency of the research and development staff. Because it's an interesting situation with nutrition. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same level of research that you would have with a pharmaceutical drug, which is the double-blind placebo-controlled trials. But more and more, but there are some companies who are coming out with that gold standard, they call it, where it passes that high level of scrutiny, so that you have that extra assurance that the product really does what it claims to do. But yeah, I would look for studies. I would look for the credentials of the researchers that are involved with the product, and again, word of mouth is important. I mean, if you have someone that you trust that has referred you to it, then ask them the questions. That's one of the reasons I'm a big believer in word of mouth marketing, is because you get educated consumers who care, who will take the time, who, if they don't know the answer, will track it down for you. But just be an educated consumer. Be your own advocate. Ask the questions.
One of our doctors mentioned that you need to also look out for natural complexes and not just combinations of synthetic single isolates as well. I think there's something to be said for the natural matrix, complex, natural complexes, right?
Sure, again, and then it goes back to my earlier conversation. I mean, a supplement is a form of food. I mean, you're supplementing the nutrients that would have been in a whole food. So the closer you can get to the food form, typically the higher the quality is. So.
Right. Now, Lory, if you don't mind, I'm just going to switch presenters real quick whilst we wrap this thing up, just so we can announce our upcoming webinar coming on Tuesday. But I think we have most of the questions have been answered. I think people just loved listening to what you had to say, and this, does make perfect sense. And I did tell you guys that she does make it simple and understandable, and I think it's also been a call to action, information plus a call to action. So again, you can always contact her on our website. And Lory, you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up tonight? This has been fantastic, by the way.
No, again, I think part of what I wanted to do, honestly, David, is keep it simple and to illustrate the point that education is phenomenal. I really appreciate what you guys do and taking it to the deeper level. But sometimes when you take it to the deeper level and you come through the other side, you turn around and see it for what it is. And sometimes it's just really simple and it's straightforward. And I think much of the time for quality of life, it's the simple lifestyle choices that we make day to day, and then improving on that with, for example, the supplementation and making the highest and best choice that you can. So, yeah, I definitely believe in the higher education, but sometimes simple and straightforward is really the place to go.
Well said. Well said. Well, Lory, again, thank you so much. It's absolutely, we're going to be talking about this more and more. I think we need to have you regularly on our webinars to share your wisdom and insights. So I appreciate you taking the time. I know this took a lot of time to put this together, especially when you put it on an Apple the first time and you have to just convert it to a PC, God forbid, huh?
Oh, no worries. It was my honor.
Okay.
Thanks, David. Bless you guys.
Thank you. All right, folks. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week. Remember, there's a calendar on our website, so you can actually see all the upcoming webinars and make your choices about which ones you want to attend. Most people just attend everything, interestingly enough. So you have a good night, and have a great weekend. God bless. Bye.
Good night. Thank you, Lory.
You bet, Sherry. Bye-bye.